This is the Truth Network.
Hidden treasures of the 119th Psalm. So wonderful, wonderful knowledge that we get today in the 5th verse of the Tav section of the 119th Psalm, as we've been talking about all the way through the Tav section, that it has everything to do with truth, and we will know the truth in the end. And even as we talked about in the last episode, the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, or, they'll know you're my disciples by how you love one another. So really cool. This particular verse, which is, the 5th verse, is the knowledge anointing. And this we read in English, verse 173. Let thine hand help me, for I have chosen thy precepts. So again, as we've talked about, that, every verse starts with the letter that has to do with its section. And once again, as this idea of let is the word that begins with that letter Tav, and the idea of, the result will be that his hand is going to help us. Essentially, that will be the fruit, or the proof of the pudding will be, as if his hand is helping you, then wow, you must be choosing the precepts. And the precepts, as we've talked about many times, as I've studied this more and more, have to do with face-to-face meetings of holiness, growing closer to God, not only with God, but also with people of God. So since people of God have God in them, so when you meet together with groups like Bible studies, or at church, or at Sunday school, or men's groups or women's groups, even your own family, if you're talking about and meeting about God in a family devotion, this is a precept. And as we keep those, then we're saying, or the psalmist is telling us, that, God is going to come in with his hand and help you, like he did with Jacob, with Laban, right? His hand helped him with get those more spotted sheep and goats. And so these two verses are very connected. But this is a piece of knowledge that is very, very valuable, that our precepts, as we keep these meetings with God and we keep these meetings with other people, then we're putting ourselves in a position for God to help us with his hand. And so my story along these lines, I often think about, because actually I think about it every week, because when we were, maybe I have to tell a little bit of the backstory, is that at one point in time I ran the Chrysler store that was up here right by the radio station. It's now called North Point Chrysler. At the time I was there, it was called Bob Neal Chrysler, and I was the president of that company. And when I got fired from that company and went on to start Westside Chrysler, it was a bitter pill for me to swallow. I should have let it go, but I couldn't. And for years, I hated to even come up to this part of town, because it reminded me of the agony of putting all my hard work into this company that flourished the way it did. And then my thanks for that was getting fired from my point of view, right? And so I was bitter about that. And so, for me to even go by North Point was a difficult thing for me. And so I knew how I felt about North Point. I think it's tremendously funny, God's sense of humor, that how many times I've had to go by North Point now that I've worked here for about a little over, 11, 12 years, whatever it's been, or even doing the Christian Car Guy show for years. I have to go right by North Point because it's right there on my way to work. And certainly long since worked through this thing. But right at this point that I'm going to tell you the story, I was pretty bitter. And so to even come to this part of town was hurtful to me. And so as I was locking the dealership that day that Stu Epperson offered me the job and all that, at that particular day, I had a devotion, which I have done for years and years at Somerset. And I had started doing that almost the year. In fact, I did start doing it the year that we opened the dealership in 1998. And so every week on Friday back then, I would do a devotion, which in sense is a precept, right? And they were dear saints that have come and gone, obviously, over the years, of one of which you've heard me talk about was Miss Beck. And it was just a choice thing that I got to do, which was to do these devotions. Well, on Thursday mornings, for years and years and years, I had Christian Businessmen's Committee there in Mocksville, which was another precept. And so by me meeting with my Christian brothers in Mocksville for years was my precept that I had chosen, right? And I had chosen to do the one at Somerset. So as I am walking back across the dealership the day that I knew I was going to close it and have to change careers or do whatever it was that I was going to do, I started to think about how bad I felt when I would go by North Point, and I said, God, please don't make me hate this place the way I hate North Point, this part of Mocksville, because I love this part of Mocksville. And there's two things. I mean, I understand I can't run the dealership anymore, and I understand I'm going to go away from this, and I don't know where you're taking me, but wherever I go, could I please still continue? And I did. I chose that day. I said, can I please still continue to do the devotion at Somerset, and can I still do CBMC, Christian Businessmen's Committee? And miraculously, from my point of view, to this day, in fact, actually, I'm recording this today on a Thursday morning, because what I did was, to make things easier, I made Christian Businessmen's meeting early Thursday morning, and then I would leave from there and go to do Somerset. So I do actually 2 precepts every Thursday morning that I ask God to let me do, and I do to this day, and I can't even tell you the many ways that God's hand has provided for me to be able to do that. In other words, I chose these precepts. Oh my gosh, these friendships, these 100 mothers I've talked about that are in my life, and my friends at Christian Businessmen's Committee that I meet with every week. I mean, I just have no concept of what my life would be like if I didn't have these people to share God with. I mean, so much of what I share over the years on the radio happened as a result of me talking with these 2 groups long before I did the Christian Car Guy show on Saturday. So what happens for years and years and years is God begins to teach me something. I take that to my Christian Businessmen's meeting early on Thursday morning and talk to them about it. And after they help me get, sort of pictured in my mind, then I would teach about that at the devotions, same concept, same idea. And whatever that was, God would give me, then I would take it on to the Christian Car Guy show on Saturday. And then on Sunday, I would get to do that with my special needs class. In other words, I would need to provide that same piece of learning in a way that my special needs class would learn it. And so, interestingly, God gave me a way to keep all these different precepts so beautifully. And a lot of people go, Robbie, I can't believe you do all those things. But it's not really, it's just like my life. It's absolutely beautiful that God, right, because I chose his precepts, right? His hand of providence is on me. And so I hope that in your life you have some precepts that you can continue to choose. And God, you can clearly see, right, this verse come to life, because the proof of the pudding is, are you still doing it? Well, God's hand must be in it. As the idea of the letter Tav is, again, that verse in 173, let thine hand help me, for I have chosen thy precepts.